back down and shut your trap. It's time for
Keeping It Sports with M3.
Are you ready?
Are you ready?
Well, I'll need some beer.
Are you ready?
You have to ask me nicely.
Come on now, don't be bashful.
Are you ready? Are you ready for
Place for the best sports talk and news surrounding each league.
I can prove it with my usual flawless logic.
Hey, man, this time I'm going to do it my way.
What's your name again?
And now, here's your host, M3, Mike Rosansky. Good evening, everyone. Normally coming to you from Cherry Hill, New Jersey, but tonight from Freehold, New Jersey, it's time for Keeping It Sports with M3, usually powered by the Connecticut School of Broadcasting. Good evening. I'm, of course, your host, Mike M3 Rosansky, coming to you here on this Monday, the evening of August 3rd, 2026. Hope you all have been having a great day. Hope you all had a great start to your week. Whether you were working, whatever it is you were doing today, thank you for taking some time out of your evening to join me for my podcast. Whether you're watching live on Facebook or any other social media channel of mine, or if you can't stand seeing my face and you're listening to the podcast version, which you can find through all of the available podcast streaming apps on our Linktree page. Just go to linktree.com, type in M3 Rosansky, and there should pop up the page for Keeping It Sports with M3, where you can find us through Podbean.com, Spotify, Apple Podcasts, just amongst the many podcast platforms this is available, as well as all of the links to my different social media channels, whether it be on Twitter, Instagram, and of course on Facebook. And remember, share it for anyone that you know that may be interested in sports and interested in hearing someone rant and rave about sports on a weekly basis. As you may notice, I am doing the podcast from my dining room this week. Didn't feel like going into Cherry Hill to do it in the normal studios, not just because of weather, but also because today was a very important day on the sports calendar that I was following all throughout the day. The Major League Baseball trade deadline, where, like many baseball fans out there, I was scrolling through Twitter throughout the day, continuously refreshing my feeds on that and on Instagram to see the updates on the moves made around the sport, especially for my favorite baseball team, the New York Yankees, who I thought they understood the assignment. I thought they understood the significance of this trade deadline. Significance that if you listen to this podcast on a regular basis, I have been explaining to you all for, I don't know, about 2 months now, the things that this team needed, the areas that they were lacking in, if they not just wanted to get back to, but also win a World Series, something that they have not done since 2009. See, the standards are different for the New York Yankees than many teams in this area. Many teams in this area, whether you're the Jets, the Brooklyn Nets, hell, the Devils, the Islanders, you would just be happy with making the playoffs and living by the Brian Cashman mindset and philosophy of saying, hey, it's a crapshoot. That isn't the standard, or shouldn't be the standard, for the New York Yankees. At least I thought it wasn't the standard for the New York Yankees. And while I do believe that owner Hal Steinbrenner wants to win, while I do believe he considers it important, he clearly doesn't consider it as important as his father, the late great George Steinbrenner, once considered it. I will never consider that man and accuse that man of being cheap. And they've spent as much money as anyone across the sport since Hal Steinbrenner took over the reins as majority owner of the New York Yankees. But clearly, he's accepted and tolerated what has happened over the last 20 years. The fact that he never puts pressure on the one person, the one problem with the New York Yankees. And it's been a constant problem with this team for north of 20 years now that has gotten hidden because of the Yankees constantly being in the postseason outside of 2008, 2013, 2014, and the abysmal 2023 season. And that would, of course, be the head of baseball operations, Yankees general manager Brian Cashman, who he has been duped and fooled into keeping this guy around based on their track record of winning seasons. But let's be honest here, people. Brian Cashman has been very fortunate over his baseball lifetime. Very fortunate that he inherited a dynasty that was built by the late, great Gene Michael. He did not have to go through those struggles of the early 90s, late 80s, where you were dealing with the George Steinbrenner suspension and having to rebuild the farm system. He got to celebrate the fruits of that labor by being the general manager in the late 90s after Gene Michael, and to a lesser extent Bob Watson, built those teams, and he just didn't have to screw it up. I don't even give Brian Cashman credit for the championship in 2009 because that team was still on the remnants of the Gene Michael dynasty, and they bought that team a championship with buying the 3 top free agents that prior offseason in Sabathia, Teixeira, and Burnett. In the time that Brian Cashman has been the general manager, you have seen the Boston Red Sox go to 4 World Series and win 4 championships. You have seen the Los Angeles Dodgers go to 5 World Series and win 3 championships, including the last 2. You have even seen division rival such as the Tampa Bay Rays go to 2 World Series in that time, albeit coming up short to both the Phillies and the Dodgers. But for some reason, he has continued to remain general manager even under those lofty expectations by the fan base because, let's face it, the Yankees have largely become the Dallas Cowboys of Major League Baseball, where they're living off of their legacy, living off of the past, rather than trying to put themselves in the best position to win today. They have wasted, so far, the primes of Aaron Judge and Garrett Cole, 2 future Hall of Famers who are not getting any younger. Aaron Judge is 34 years old and on the IL, and Garrett Cole is, 35, 36 years old and still trying to work his way back from missing all of last year due to Tommy John surgery. And even with how abysmal this American League is, where you only have about 5 or 6 teams that are over 500, you would have thought that Brian Cashman would realize the opportunity is in front of them at this deadline to seek and grab the American League, a weak American League this year, and answer for a lot of the Yankees' problems. Catcher, third base, Jazz Chisholm and Trent Grisham's inconsistencies, and the continued existence of Anthony Volpe on this team, as well as addressed the bullpen, which the bullpen has been better than anyone could have asked for. Even be that outside of David Bednar, you don't have big names in there. You have a lot of either reclamation projects like the likes of Brett Hendricks or Paul Blackburn, or guys that you got through trades, such as Fernando Cruz and this youngster in Angel Chivihi. But they've started to leak air in the last couple weeks, especially the likes of Cruz and Paul Blackburn. You worry about the amount that they've used Hedrick so far this season. And at some point, Chivihi, you figure, is going to give up a run here. So you would have liked to add a bullpen arm on to this squad. Beyond just them finally waking up and kicking Camilo Duvall to the curb and sending him to the Pirates over the weekend. I mean, I'm at work and doing cartwheels. The fact that there was actually a team out there foolish enough to give us 2 living, breathing human beings for a guy that throws 100 miles an hour but had been utter trash for this team so far this season. The Yankees had to make upgrades on this lineup, because even with Aaron Judge and Cody Bellinger healthy, they had black holes in this lineup. Those two coming off the IL, whether it's later this month or at some point in September, is not going to solve their problems. They had the absolute worst offense at the catcher position so far this year in total, when you include batting average, on-base percentage, and slugging percentage. And you look at Austin Wells. Austin Wells has 14 RBIs on the season. That's the same amount as Giancarlo Stanton, and Giancarlo Stanton hasn't played since April. They made a nice move yesterday in getting Luis Garcia Jr. Add some power to this lineup, a legitimate left-handed threat that you can put at either first base or DH, has had a breakout year and been very good for the Nationals, and you gave up just a bunch of spare parts as far as relievers are concerned. And you gave away all your bullpen depth, guys that were not amongst your top relievers, but didn't refill those holes through this deadline. Garcia will come in here, join this lineup, and essentially platoon with Paul Goldschmidt. And I looked at that move, I'm like, all right, nice move. Been amongst the best power hitters in the sport over the last 2 months, but it had to be a start to good movement. Couldn't just be the move. But as it would turn out, it became the move of this deadline. Because yeah, you went and acquired Heliot Ramos from the Giants about 2 hours before the trade deadline, but he's really just a backup outfielder. His platoon splits this year, good against lefties, meh against righties, an under 300 on-base percentage against righties, over 340 against lefties, hit 290 against them. Not a good defensive player, and is a right-handed at bat. So you would figure he's not coming in here to take time away from either Spencer Jones or Jason Dominguez, unless it's against left-handed pitching, who, I got to be honest here, I'm surprised both of those guys are still here. I figured that they would have been put in a package to go get someone, but then again, that's another example of Brian Cashman overvaluing his prospects. You notice that over the years, he has held on to these prospects too long until either, in the case of somebody like when you had Miguel Andujar, injuries started to take their toll, as well as it was with Clint Frazier, who they never really gave a chance to, or the prospect light on them dimmed so much once we saw them as big leaguers that they really had no true value to this team, as you've seen with certain players over the years. And you're starting to see with Dominguez, maybe it's too early to cast that on Spencer Jones, as he's still technically considered a rookie, but he is 24, 25 years old, so he's not considered what we would normally look at as a very young rookie. He's a guy that went to college and took a long time to progress through the minor leagues. But it's frustrating when you watch this deadline, you look around the sport and you see the movement that certain teams are making. You see the actions by certain teams. Take, for example, the Philadelphia Phillies. The Philadelphia Phillies did not have a clear fit, did not have a clear need for a player like Luis Arraez, a guy who I thought would have been perfect for the Yankees, but they're going to make it work out. They're planning on moving their current second baseman, Bryson Stott, to third base, moving their current third baseman, Alex Bohm, from third to first, and taking Bryce Harper from first and moving him back to the outfield. It's not a perfect alignment, but they're going to make it work out due to the fact that Arraez didn't like playing first base and is a guy that does not strike out a lot. He puts the bat on ball. He's got the best batting average in the National League, something that I think a lot of the sport has forgotten. Yeah, it does matter. This launch angle and all these analytics have clouded everybody's head into thinking batting average doesn't matter, but making contact with the baseball, even if it's not for a lot of power, it can lead to good things. Just because a guy doesn't hit a lot of home runs does not mean he's not a very useful player. The guy has only struck out 20 times this season, whereas Jazz Chisholm has struck out over 100 times. Why are we caring about fit and how it's going to negatively affect Jazz Chisholm when in all likelihood you're not re-signing him? He's had a bad season. He's been an immature, bratty player that has embarrassed the manager at times, and yet you're more concerned about his fit. Then to add to this, the biggest need that they needed on offense was an upgrade at catcher. It's a double whammy when you don't address the catcher position, but you watch the team that you're chasing, the Rays, go get Liam Hicks from the Marlins, and you're watching the Boston Red Sox go get Adley Rutschman, who, yeah, he has not lived up truly to the first-round talent that he once was with the Baltimore Orioles. But what he is he's a switch-hitting option that they're going to put in the middle of that lineup when he comes off the IL in the middle of this month. Did they give up a hefty price for him, giving up 3 of their top 5 prospects? Yeah. But that's the price of doing business within your division, especially when you're the Orioles, who are still somewhat in the midst of this playoff race. So that's another damning thing on Cashman. Not only you not go for a player that could have helped you at the top of the lineup in Arraez when you just made a trade for a player in Garcia who's not a clear fit yesterday afternoon. But you watch your 2 division rivals, one that you're chasing and one that's right on your ass, go get at a position that was a desperate need for you. It feels like Brian Cashman, and while he hasn't spoken yet, or I haven't at least heard what he's said yet, I'm sure he's talked to the media, he's going to use as his excuse the returns of Aaron Judge and of Cody Bellinger. I'm not even counting Giancarlo Stanton because for all we know, he could get re-injured waking up, getting out of bed tomorrow and not see him again. Hell, I think there's a better chance than not with what he's dealt with, how he's been out since April, that we don't see him again this year. And how, if there's a lockout next year, we may not see him as a Yankee ever again. For him to just sit on his hands and do nothing to upgrade this offense beyond going and getting Luis Garcia at this trade deadline is completely inexcusable. It's an embarrassing, disgusting trade deadline. The fact that you're not going to go out there, and he's going to have to throw, as one person out there on social media would put it, lipstick on a pig here and go and make the move most Yankee fans want now, bringing up their shortstop prospect, George Lombard Jr. You didn't trade him in some big package. You steadfast in saying, this is the guy we got to hold on to. Then bring him up. He's been killing it down in AAA as of recently, and no one wants to see Anthony Volpe anymore. He just brings a hindrance upon this lineup and this team every time he's out there. Every single time he's out there, it seems like you have 2 to 3 guys playing out of defensive position, and at some point during the game, the ball will find him and he makes some kind of low IQ, hideous defensive play. So end the Anthony Volpe era. Rip the Band-Aid off. Expose the wound and get his ass out of here. Whether you got to option him to the minor leagues, DFA him, whatever it may be. Because he has no place on this team anymore. With Caballero fading, use him what he was supposed to be as a utility guy, and put the pressure on the likes of Jazz Chisholm and Ryan McMahon to show them that their playing time should not be guaranteed, especially when you've gotten really nothing out of Ahmed Rosario. I would continue playing Spencer Jones every day as he's starting to hit for some power as of late, and maybe see a little less of Dominguez, especially with how hideous his defense is. But you could not let this year go to waste, and that's what it feels like Cashman's done, especially when you have such, on paper, an elite pitching staff. The potential to go into a postseason with Cam Schlittler, Max Fried, Garrett Cole, and hopefully Carlos Rodon is something not many teams could truly match up against. I know the Rays went out and got Freddie Peralta, but he's been a total mess so far this season for the Mets, and I doubt just going down to Tampa, pairing him up with the Rays coaching staff is going to completely turn him around just at the snap of a finger back to the pitcher he once was, or what we once thought of him to be with the Milwaukee Brewers. It's a very frustrating, very disgusting performance by Brian Cashman at this trade deadline, and I can't believe that he continues to be enabled to do this. But as I said before, the Yankees have become a lot like the Dallas Cowboys. They are living off reputation and the past and not thinking about the future, not thinking about what this year could be, and living with a completely wrong mindset of thinking that this is all one big old crapshoot. All right, I got a lot more I want to get to when it comes to the trade deadline here coming up, including the Mets making a lot of moves today, the big move that was made over the weekend with Tarik Skubal being traded, mixing some football thoughts as well. So plenty to get to on this Monday evening. Glad you guys could join me once again this week. And like I tell you each and every single Monday at this time, please sit back, relax, help put your feet up if you feel like it, and continue keeping sports with M3.
I'll be back.
This was a rather active trade deadline via a volume standpoint. Not a lot of big superstars were traded outside of the one that we'll get to in a couple minutes, but you did see a lot of starting pitchers moved around at this deadline. Teams that were both contenders and teams out of the mix of things looking to build toward next year made moves on the starting pitching front to upgrade their staffs, or in their minds, hopefully upgrade their staffs, such as the Chicago White Sox making a surprising move over the weekend to acquire Luis Castillo from the Seattle Mariners, White Sox, who have been one of the bigger surprises in the sport this year, and good for them, not just resting on laurels, not just saying, oh, that this is a surprise year, we're going to keep building along things. They see the landscape of the American League. They're like, let's take a shot at this. We don't know if we're going to be good next year. We don't know if there's going to be a next year, depending on what happens with this CBA negotiations and the lockout. So they go out there and get Luis Castillo, who's not as big a name as he once was. Remember, this was once considered one of the prized young pitchers in the sport when he was coming up with the Cincinnati Reds. 5 years ago, he was the guy that everybody wanted to go out there and acquire, and the Mariners were the team fortunate to get him. While he hasn't quite lived up to that hype with them, he has been, over the course of his career, a solid starting pitcher, been better on the road than he is at the Mariners ballpark, and you would hope injecting him into a team that is more in the midst of things in the race. They're currently, the White Sox, that being, in first place in the American League Central. No one else in that Central has really taken off and truly welcome themselves into the conversation. I mean, I know the Twins made a couple of moves in the last couple of days, getting AJ Minter and Dean Kramer. But even with that, they lost 2 out of 3 over the weekend and still fell a game under 500. The Guardians have been up and down, hit or miss so far this season. So the White Sox are taking a crack at things, taking their shot at this race here. Went and got a starting pitcher. The Mariners are far from out of it, but they figured, let's at least get something for this guy who has only a year and a half left of team control. Hopefully one of these young players, whether it be the catching prospect, Boston Smith or Nolan Jones, turns into a something for them, and they're hoping that a change of scenery for Sir Anthony Dominguez gets him going again. But this is a interesting trade for the White Sox. They're not the only team in town that made what they hope is an upgrade in the starting rotation. The Cubs also went out and got Kevin Gausman from the Toronto Blue Jays. He's a pending free agent, and while he's not having the strongest of seasons, he has been a good postseason pitcher so far in his career. Has struggled a bit this season, especially over his last 8 starts, putting up an ERA north of 6. But once again, you're hoping a change of scenery, more injected into a playoff race after what has been a disappointing season for the Toronto Blue Jays, will get him going. And then there were some other minor trades here and there. Would it be Jose Soriano going from the Angels to the Toronto Blue Jays? The Brewers acquired a starting pitcher, not the big fish that they were hoping to get, but another guy in the rotation at a time when they're dealing with some injuries with Woodruff and Harrison on the IL. But of course, the big move that everybody is talking about and has garnered so much attention over the last 48 hours is the Los Angeles Dodgers acquiring Tarik Skubal from the Detroit Tigers. And there's 2 ends of this. There's the frustrating part, seeing the Los Angeles Dodgers get another big name player, getting a guy that was the winner of the American League Cy Young Award the last 2 seasons and is arguably, depending on who you talk to, the best pitcher in baseball. You look at what he's done these last 2 years, it's remarkable. It's over the top impressive. And he's still in the midst of his prime at 29 years old. For a Dodgers team that has acquired so much talent over the last couple of years, having Mookie Betts, signing Freeman, of course, Shohei Ohtani, making other pitching moves and getting Yamamoto, Glasnow, Snell. Every time you turn around, they're acquiring a big name free agent or somebody through trades. It's annoying, it's aggravating, and it's led them to winning the last 2 World Series. But at the same time, if you're a fan of theirs, or you're just someone who watches from the outside, you have to respect it. You have to respect the fact that an organization can put themselves in this position time after time again, that they have drafted so well that people view their prospects as so highly regarded that they can trade 3 guys that are in their top 20 as far as prospects are concerned, and it barely even put a dent in their organizational depth. It's not even like they gave up 3 of their top 4 prospects. And you look at these guys in Hope, River Ryan, and Brady Smith. They were respectively ranked 5th, 7th, and 17th in the Dodgers organization. River Ryan's a guy that's dealt with a lot of injuries in his career. That's why he's 27, about to be 28, barely even made it up for a cup of coffee in the big leagues. The Tigers are hoping that Hope can be a future everyday player contending for MVPs for them. It's aggravating when you see how many teams were in the midst of this, whether it be the Cubs, Braves, Brewers, Rays, hell, even the New York Yankees. And you're saying, looking at that package, they gave up 3 prospects that were not even in their top 4. No one else could have matched it. It's understandable the Brewers and the Rays, who are organizations that have to build off of their prospect pool. They can't go out there and spend the big bucks every time and risk being wrong about losing certain prospects, or risk making these kind of trades when it comes to their prospects and losing a guy like Skubal in free agency at the end of this year just for potentially one crack at things. But for the Cubs and the Braves, who are both trying to contend with the Dodgers in getting to the World Series, being the team that comes out of the National League this year and blocks their dynasty, the fact that they didn't put a better foot forward in all of this is kind of annoying. It's kind of aggravating to watch. Now, it does lead to a lot of people like myself feeling like this is going to greater boast the chances of there being a lockout when the CBA comes up after this year, with another expensive, big-time talent joining that Dodgers pool upon what they already have. But there's one thing that people are not thinking about right now when it comes to the Dodgers. At some point, the debt has to be paid. At some point, the toll is going to be paid here. Because it's not like when you look at the Dodgers, like their roster is entirely built from within. You have 2 guys on this team that are pretty much regulars that are homegrown Dodgers, that being Will Smith and Andy Pages. And Pages is the only one that's still in his 20s. There is a lot of age on this Dodger team. And at some point, the laws of physics, the laws of science, hell, Father Time, it catches up to everybody. You look at it, Mookie Betts is 33 years old. Freddie Freeman is 36 years old. Max Muncy, 35. Teoscar Hernandez is 33. Hell, even Shohei Ohtani, despite his greatness, is 32, and he's dealing with bicep and knee injuries that are preventing him from pitching right now. That's another thing that people do not realize, and why the Dodgers felt the need to go make this move, because there's no guarantees that Ohtani's going to pitch for them at all for the rest of this season. Hell, they've been without Glasnow and Snell, who I still think is a highly overrated pitcher, for several months now. And this is not like a video game like MLB The Show. This is not like you bring them off the IL and suddenly they're going to be back to form. It's going to take time. You got to ramp them up. You have to have them in full gear. We've seen it most recently with Max Fried when he came back with the Yankees after a 2-month layoff. Yeah, he pitched great in his first start back against the Pirates, but after that, you saw some struggles against the White Sox. You saw him have to battle through 5 innings against the Chicago Cubs over the weekend. It's not that easy after missing so much time to get back in the mix of things. The same applies for their closer, Edwin Diaz, who they've been without for a time being. So they're trying to get insurance here in their rotation, realizing that, hey, we've dealt with injuries in our pitching staff. We have a lot of age on this team. And with all of these deferred contracts, at some point, we're going to have to pay up this money. And I'm not going to be able to continuously restock this team. At some point, some of these prospects that we praise, that we hail, they're going to have to join this team in order for them to continue to be a successful, relevant franchise. So yeah, it's annoying. I was pissed off at the time. A lot of it was because I was half drunk on Saturday night, I'll be honest. Still recovering from a 4-shot Jack and Coke at the time. But you got to respect it. You got to respect a team that is willing to go for it. A big market team that is not just resting on the laurels, not just resting on the fact that, hey, we got 2 titles in the bag here with this group. We're good here. They want to go for a dynasty. They want to really cement it before who knows what happens this year. The rules of engagement, whether there's a salary cap or not, whether there's several restrictions put on them and they're forced to trade people away, it could be a totally different landscape going into next season. Hell, we may not even have a season in general. So while they have the shot, while they have the chance, they want to go for it and make the most of what they have out of this group. And as a fan, I may not like it, but I gotta respect it.
I'll be back.
I'm all for confidence. I'm all for believing in yourself. Hell, in life, no matter what aspect of life it is, what you're doing, what profession you're in, if you don't believe in yourself, why the hell should anybody believe in you? But at the same time, you've got to be able to read the room. At the same time, you've got to be able to look yourself in the mirror each and every single day and be like, who the hell am I? Who the hell am I to be either overly boisterous or running my mouth about something that doesn't concern me? And of course, right now I'm talking about current Tennessee Titans head coach and former head coach of our New York Jets, Robert Saleh, who has had the gall as of late to be running his mouth about the New York Jets, who, if you're not familiar with this, the New York Jets and the Tennessee Titans will be playing in week 1 down in Nashville, Tennessee on Sunday, September 13th. A game that, I'll be honest, it's going to decide a lot of the Jets season. They win, then there's a shot for them to have a somewhat respectable season, be a cute little 7-10-ish kind of team that is gritty, gutty, and at least respectable around Thanksgiving. They lose, it's going all the way to hell, and going to be another miserable season where we're talking about around Christmas time predicting what day Aaron Glenn gets fired. But recently, I've seen the reports, and this is coming from the so-called Jets superfan. I think he's kind of a fraud. I think he's kind of overrated. Fireman Ed, who's been doing the podcast circuit as of late, his most recent one being on the Jake Asman show, where he was saying that a little birdie out of Titans camp says that Robert Saleh's been running his mouth saying they were going to beat the Jets' asses in week 1. That they were going to beat their ass, quote, "We are going to beat their asses." I'm like, well, first off, take anything that Fireman Ed says with a grain of salt, because this is a guy that's quit on his Jet fandom several times in the last decade and goes on these protests of the Jets thinking like he actually matters. And Ed, like, come on, man, get the hell over yourself. You're not paid by the team. You should be considering yourself very fortunate you're showed on the Jumbotron as much as you are during some of these games, and has actually acted like it's an insult or a disrespect to him when he's not shown on the Jumbotron. So calm yourself down there, Ed. And it's one thing to be confident, but Robert Saleh, like, talking so much smack heading into week 1 for a franchise in the Titans that is no right to be talking smack in their own right. Have they gone 3-14 the last couple of years as well as the Jets have? I mean, they may view this as a winnable game playing the Jets, but who are they to be talking shit? Who are they to be talking smack? You're still trying to figure out if your quarterback Cam Ward can actually play in this league, or if, much like the Jets are likely going to be doing in next year's draft, seeking out your next future long-term quarterback, hopefully. I mean, you failed with Will Levis, who was a bust of a second-round draft pick, and he is delusional enough to still think he's a top 30 quarterback in this league. I mean, that's a whole different discussion. But Saleh, keep quiet, because this is now going to be used against you if you lose on September 13th. You're providing unnecessary bulletin board material in a game that very little people are going to, outside of myself, actually give a damn about on Sunday, September 13th. So be quiet, go about your business. Otherwise, you're going to be looking like as much of an ass as you have the last couple of years, especially with how neutered you felt like you looked as the Jets head coach. As I said, the Jets are going to be looking for their hopeful future long-term answer at quarterback in next year's draft. But one other option has become somewhat of an intriguing proposition for the Jets, as they're going to have a lot of cap space going into next offseason. And there's the potential of a solid big-name QB being available, and that being Baker Mayfield, who I give Baker a lot of credit. He has very much repaired his image over the last couple of years after looking somewhat like a bust when he left Cleveland. He's jumped around to a couple of different teams, first Carolina, then out to LA for a brief stint with McVay and the Rams, to now the last several years with the Tampa Bay Buccaneers, looking like a top 15 to 20ish quarterback in this sport, looking like a guy that can lead a very successful team. And he's still relatively young for NFL quarterback standards, especially with how long we see guys playing today. He's 31 years old. Now, is he going to reach ever the standards of his two draft mates in Josh Allen and Lamar Jackson? Probably not. But he's good enough to lead a team in the right situation to what we saw Sam Darnold do this past year with the Seattle Seahawks. Put a team in position to be a Super Bowl contender. Now, with the Buccaneers, it's going to be a harder proposition, as he's now lost what was the ultimate safety net in Mike Evans, as he's gone on to play for the San Francisco 49ers, and it could be even more difficult now with what's going on with Vita Vea, as he's holding in at team minicamps and requesting a trade after his standards for a new contract have not been met. And you can't blame him, especially after what you're seeing Jalen Carter get paid recently from the Eagles, that new 4-year, $152 million contract extension, become the highest paid defensive tackle in NFL history. And he's saying, hey, wait a minute, time out. I've been in this league longer and I've accomplished more than this kid. I should be getting some more cheese on my taco like what he just got. But Baker is dealing with a contract dispute as well, and you can't help but side with Baker Mayfield, especially when you consider what I've always said the NFL stands for: not for long. You've got to be able to make your money when you can, and what you've seen from this guy the last couple of years, in his time with the Tampa Bay Bucks, he's led them to 2 of the last 3 NFC South titles, got into the postseason, and probably would have got there again last year if not for all of the injuries that team tried to battle throughout the season, being without Mike Evans for a good majority of the season, losing members of his offensive line, and still he tried to grit and gut his way to a playoff appearance at the end of the year, but came up short to the Carolina Panthers in what was a very winnable NFC South. When you see the amount he's gotten paid, and then look at some of these other quarterbacks in the league, the guys that he's used as his comps, he's not asking for Allen, Mahomes, Burrow, Lamar Jackson kind of money. No. That would be reckless and irresponsible, although you can't get what you can't ask for. He's comparing himself to the likes of Jordan Love, Trevor Lawrence, and Brock Purdy, all who are making in that $53 to $55 million range. And I'm sorry, he deserves to get paid in that kind of ballpark. You look at it, Brock Purdy couldn't overcome all of the injuries the 49ers had last season, and they came up short, got dismantled by the Seahawks in the postseason. And he's been more of a product of the Kyle Shanahan system. He's been, if we're going to be fair about things, more of the 4th or 5th reason why the 49ers have been successful in recent years. Trevor Lawrence has, one playoff victory to his name? And Jordan Love, we've seen him crap the bed in the postseason, and he has more offensive firepower than Baker Mayfield has. He has more depth at the wide receiver position than Baker Mayfield has had. So if Mayfield is asking for that kind of money, that kind of ballpark in cash, the Tampa Bay Bucks would be foolish not to meet him at his price and let him walk out the door next year. Because let's say he balls out because he's pissed off, has a me against the world kind of season, and then says, all right, peace, I'm out of here. You lose him potentially for nothing. You're drafting in the middle of the pack of things, and then you're screwed because you're not able to draft one of the top quarterback prospects. You've let high-end talent walk out the door the last couple of years at the wide receiver position, and now you lose the best option you had available to you at quarterback. And I wouldn't be against him being the Jets quarterback in the 2027 season. Then you could take those other draft picks and use them to fill up the depth on this team, fill up the roster, and you would be able to afford it because, yeah, you're paying big money to Baker Mayfield, but you wouldn't be paying any of these kids just yet. You can go out there and get him a big-time wide receiver, whether it be Jeremiah Smith or someone else from Ohio State, which has become essentially wide receiver university. You can go out there and get him, whether it be another center on the offensive line or another edge rusher or corner. Fill up the depth options that you're lacking in certain spots and have a premium, high-caliber quarterback. So if he's available, I'm all for Baker Mayfield potentially being the next quarterback of the New York Jets.
I'll be back.
Good to see at least one New York baseball team understood their assignment coming into the Major League Baseball trade deadline. And listen, anytime you're a seller in any sport and your team has had a dreadful, awful season, it hurts. It hurts to be that team that is essentially trading off players for what ifs, whether it's in the NFL and you're getting back draft picks, NBA getting draft picks, or in the case of Major League Baseball, you get prospects or minor leaguers, because all of them are suspect until you see them. If we're going to be fair about things, only about 10 to 15% of top prospects ever truly live up to their hype. A lot of these guys, it's lottery tickets, and you're hoping that they can turn out to be something for you. And you hope that you get enough of these guys that you'll be able to turn some of them into useful players for your team. And in some cases, maybe even a star, maybe even a gem turns into a awesome player for you at some point. And the Mets understood that assignment coming into today. They're 18 games under 500. They're last place in their division, have one of the 3 worst records in the National League. They're not going anywhere at 45-67. So it was better off that they trade off whatever parts that they could trade off and get some pieces for them. You knew that they were going to trade away a lot of pitchers. I figured that Francisco Lindor was not going to be amongst those that they traded. That's a move that if you do make it, you do it during the off season when you have more teams, a bigger pool of teams to possibly trade for, and maybe find somewhere that he likes beyond just New York City if you truly feel that the relationship between him and Juan Soto has come to an unrepairable stance that you just have to break up that combination. But they traded away a lot of pitchers in this last week, starting with A.J. Minter to the Minnesota Twins, and in the last 24 hours continued that process with trading away Peralta to the Tampa Bay Rays, getting back 3 minor leaguers. The surprise one to a lot of people was Brazoban from their bullpen that they traded to the White Sox and got back 2 minor league pitchers. But we got to understand about Brazoban. Yes, he's under control through 2029, but he's actually older than most people realize. He's 34 years old. This is a guy that didn't come to this country until he was about 29, 30 years old, didn't come up to the big leagues until just a couple of years ago. See, he's very much a late bloomer to when it comes to a baseball career. He was kind of an afterthought when you got him a couple of years ago from the Miami Marlins, and you've been able to turn him into a very solid reliever. And at 34 years old, you don't know if this was going to continue. You don't know if this was just a fluke. So you found a team that was somewhat interested, somewhat willing to give away 2 living, breathing human beings for him. He has no real long-term future with this team, and with the shape that they're in, I don't look at them as a team that is just going to immediately turn things around into a World Series contender next year. So why not go get something for him? Like you did in the case of hopefully Peralta, Brooks Raley, who got traded to the Phillies. And you can't complain about him getting sent to the Phillies. Yes, they're an in-division team, but Brooks Raley's a free agent at the end of the year. You can always go re-sign a Brooks Raley in the offseason if you so badly want him to be part of your team. The same applies with A.J. Minter. Does it hurt seeing Luke Weaver go out the door, getting him traded to the Pittsburgh Pirates? Yes. But you were going to hang on to a guy to potentially be your closer next year when there's no guarantees of a next season, when you don't know what kind of team you're going to be putting out there, because they've made a lot of awful signings, especially in the offensive side of things, trusting on signing Polanco. I've gotten a bad year out of Pichette, and trading for Luis Roberts Jr., which they were not able to find anyone to take him on. You hope this young shortstop prospect that you got from the Pirates can eventually turn out to be something, can be a useful player for you in the future. The same as you hope what you got from the Cubs in return for Clay Holmes and Tyrone Taylor. It's a day, yeah, it sucks. I said it before, I'll say it again. It always hurts to be a seller at the trade deadline, because then that means you got 2 more miserable months of baseball to come, and at least a month of watching this team before the football season gets going, to where you've got to just deal with the aches and pains of this team, especially at a time when you don't have Juan Soto, as he's on the IL and may not play again this season. But a day like this is necessary to admit defeat, build toward the future, and look at some of the positives you have going forward. You hope that you've put together a solid young rotation going into next year with McLean, Scott, and with Taylor in the mix of things there. And I would like to see them, now that they've moved on from Peralta, bring Jonah Tong back up here and give him a chance. You've got A.J. Ewing, you've got Carson Bench. They have both showed you positive signs here in their rookie year. You got to hope that you start to get something out of some of the young infielders that you have in this organization, and that you can build a good core to be successful moving forward around Juan Soto, and if he continues to be here beyond this year, Francisco Lindor. And if you have that in place, then you go out there and you start building a bullpen. You start putting together pieces in a bullpen, whether it's re-signing Brooks Raley in the offseason, or going out there and signing a hot reliever, and you push Devin Williams back to being a setup man. Yes, today sucks, but you understood the assignment. You understood what was necessary for your organization going forward. You didn't have your head in the clouds, sitting on your hands like that dumbass Brian Cashman, and just relying on a bunch of what ifs, of what if Judge comes back, when Bellinger comes back, hopeful that the likes of Carlos Rodon can come back and slide in your rotation, and that you can add either a Ryan Weathers or Will Warren to your bullpen at some point, or bring Clark Schmidt and Luis Heel off the IL to join your bullpen at some point. Those are the what ifs that can annoy a fan base, that can leave a fan base pissed off at your GM. Yes, you have a right to be pissed off at David Stearns for the way he handled this offseason, trading away a lot of fan favorites that you didn't do winning with last season, had a disappointing season, but meant a lot to this fan base, especially in the likes of Pete Alonso. But at the very least, your organization didn't just ignore what a bad season it was, didn't ignore their reality, and are, in your case, hopefully positioning yourselves for a better day at some point in the future. It sucks, but congratulations, New York Mets. Unlike the New York Yankees, you understood your assignment at the Major League Baseball trade deadline. Maybe wake the hell up, Brian Cashman, and take some pointers from little brother and realize that your shit does stink. And that, my friends, was Keeping It Sports with M3 for Monday, August 3rd, 2026. Everyone, please have a great rest of your night and have a fun, safe, happy, healthy week. Remember, folks, you get one life, so you might as well try to live it up to the fullest. And I'll talk to you guys again sometime next week. Until then, peace.
We have to go. Good night, everybody.
I have had enough of you!
Thank you for all the fun. Thank you. Hey, shut up, will ya?
I don't want to see you, I don't want to hear you, I don't want to smell you. Now leave. I'll be back.